With that, we move on to the opening keynote titled Powering CX, Empowering Business. And it's an honor and privilege to introduce and welcome Arvinder Gujral, Managing Director, Southeast Asia, Twitter. Mr. Gujral, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate the introductions, Ivan, and thanks to Economic Times for having me here, coming to you from sunny Singapore. And it's an incredible honor to be presenting to all of you. Obviously, I have no idea who I'm presenting to because all I'm seeing is a blank screen. So I'm presuming that I will not bore you in the next 15 minutes. And I promise not to bring down the average IQ level of this group, which I have a tendency to do when I go into such August gatherings. But let me go straight to the topic at hand, customer service, customer experiences in the middle of a pandemic, right? I mean, I think all of us are fellow strugglers in this regard because all of us created beautiful, magical playbooks in 2019 for 2020. And all those beautiful plans, be it marketing plan, our strategic plans, our point of view, our playbook for 2020, we were starting to execute that in January. And come March, we realized that all those plans have to be torn into shreds and we have to start from scratch. And with that comes on how do you repurpose everything you've done in the past? How do you leverage your experiences of 2019 and before? And how do you accustom that to the new reality that we all find ourselves in? I mean, this event itself is the great symbolic nature of the kind of times we are living in. I would have to fly down to India to meet all of you folks. And the fact that I'm sitting in my living room, talking to most of you, probably in your living rooms, or some of you maybe in your offices, lucky enough, it's a testament to the times we find ourselves in. So let me start with the definition, and I'll just speak to the Economic Times before this on which part of customer experiences they want to cover, because at Twitter, we have different facets of customer experiences, and you have to define who your customer is, right? Our end customer is the end user of the app and the website, which is Twitter, right? People who come to the platform every day and have public conversations on topics that are interest to them. But we also have a layer of customers that are strategically important to our existence. They fund our existence and they give us a reason to exist. And they are our advertising clients, our agency partners, government institutions, media companies that we work with, not-for-profit, our educational institutions. We also work with a lot of such institutions to give voice to the marginalized, because Twitter cannot only be a voice to the VITs or the celebrities. It is a voice for everyone to come and have a perspective and share in a global conversational platform, which is the purpose, raison d'etre for Twitter to exist, right? Now, if that's my customer, and how do I optimize for that experience in the pandemic times that we are finding ourselves in? Obviously, pre-facto was, go in person, meet them, come to large industry conferences like this, and have, conversations on how to further our experiences together and drive partnerships with like-minded partners. But that's all playbook, which is 2019. In 2020, we've all attended and we've all experienced death by webinar, in a sense, right? And I think some of you are probably sitting in very comfortable clothing in your living rooms, listening to this and not having to wear a suit. And I myself have made sure that I represent Twitter brand to the maximum possible. My wife actually looked at me and said, "Are you wearing this as a keynote?" I'm like, well, A, it's blue, so it's part of Twitter. And two, I'm making sure I'm representing an internet economy and not looking like a banker, because an Economic Times might look twice into the agenda and say, did we invite a banker to do a keynote on customer experience? So I'm dressed very appropriate to the nature of the job and the industry in which I operate. I'm trying to bring some color to this virtual conference as much as I can. But when the pandemic hit us, at Twitter, we closed our offices early in March, and we were one of the first companies to completely shut down every office around the world. And we are very cautious. In fact, we are over-cautious on our approach on working during the pandemic. So we're one of the early companies to shut down, and we will probably one of the last companies to allow our employees back. We have obviously publicly stated two things. One is our offices are closed definitely till early 2021. And that timeline may get revised more into 2021 as we find more realities of how the pandemic is unfolding. The second thing we also announced was work from home wherever possible. And if the role permits it, you can do that as a permanent basis at Twitter. And the reason we did that is we want to invite the right talent for the role, irrespective of the geography and the boundary. And we've been practicing this not just because the pandemic struck us. We have been on this path, and Jack has been a massive proponent of decentralization, not having the center of powers which we have in headquarters, no matter where your headquarters is, and create excellence across the world, across our offices. Now, obviously, that is a journey and not a destination we've yet arrived at, but I think it's a noble gesture that we have encouraged that kind of conversation internally at Twitter. Now, but when that happens, if a lot of us are, external client-facing or partner-facing, and my team's definitely in Southeast Asia, where I come from, and SEA is a very interesting market to operate. So maybe most of you have visited this part of the world or Singapore for vacations, but working here actually gives you glimpses of parts of India, which are tier 2, tier 3 cities, or even beyond, and obviously parts of India which are like Singapore. I mean, there are a few parts of India that look like Singapore, but I wish there were more. And I speak with confidence on both SEA and India because I've been at Twitter for 7 years now. Over 7 years, I started Twitter's operations in India in my living room 7 years ago in Gurgaon. And since then, I've worked across India. And now 3 years ago, I moved to take the role in Southeast Asia. But coming to the point at hand, customer experiences. The first thing that happened, and all of us are probably experiencing that, is remote working. And somebody asked me, and I was interviewed by a TV station recently, like, how is remote working? I said, for me, at least personally, I have been doing remote work for 20 plus years because I have always been on a plane going somewhere in the world. And once you're traveling and taking a flight to a different country or a different city, and I was on a plane almost weekly, you're already remote working. You're neither at home, nor are you in office. You're actually working out of an airport or a coffee shop or a client's office waiting room, or somewhere outside where you call traditional office or your own home. Now all that has happened. My remote working has become more stationary. I'm actually stuck at home. So my office is closed. I haven't been to the office since March. And so this reality of working from my home, so it's no longer working from home, it's living at work. Because this is where I live, this is where I work, this is where my children are there, bugging me all the time, and I'm living a life. And so that reality is not just me, it's you and everyone in your teams, and we're experiencing that. So it's gone from remote working to working from home to working anywhere, right? I've just to tide over the boredom, I go to a coffee shop sometimes just to get some variety in my life. But the first thing we did at Twitter, and again, I'm not going to come at a didactic approach to say I'm holier than thou and we have perfected. Of course not. We are way far away from perfection. But I'm just going to share some of the experiences that we had at Twitter and how we are and where we are placed on this journey. And again, this journey is not complete. We're still working on this and we probably can do a better job. But the first thing we did when we closed the offices was we asked all employees around the world what we call pulse survey. Give us your feedback to us. How has the first 15, 30 days been when working from home? And we did that very, very quickly. And after 30 days of shutting our offices down, we got a quick survey back and we quickly looked at those numbers and what we are hearing from employees. And the 15 days after getting the survey numbers back, we created policies. And those policies were like, most people don't even have a working from home environment. And so we gave allowances for them to buy furniture, to set up an office desk. We gave people allowances to buy headsets, because you're going to be talking on your headphones all the time. We gave working parents allowances so they could hire someone to take care of the children at home. And a few more other stuff. But the point was the speed of reaction was what was important. Because before you look at customer experience, and I think that's one thing that I have learned at Twitter and this journey that we were on, before you look at optimizing on an external customer experience, if you haven't taken care of your own home or your own employees, they need to be in a happy place before they can give a joyful experience to your customers, whoever they may be, right? So the first thing we did was to make sure that our employees are safe, and two, they can function efficiently and in an optimal manner, because we know they're going to be working from home. We know some of them are single people living in small apartments. Some of them are extended families and living in that environment and working. So you have to make sure your employees are taken care before you can figure out how to optimize their customer experience with an external perspective. Once we did that, we said, okay, now what is the definition of our customer experience, right? Because we so used to this face-to-face interaction. And then we said, you know what? Well, webinars and these Zoom calls and Hangouts and Blue Jeans are par for the course now. And how do you measure effective customer interaction? Have we given an experience to our customer on a B2B perspective that is moving the business forward? So we had to redefine what we meant by customer interaction. So salespeople came to us saying, hey, Arvi, I'm exchanging WhatsApp or line messages with my customers in Thailand. Do I take that into account as customer interaction? Should we tag it? And then we had to actually qualify what we meant by interaction. And at Twitter, we are very good at quantifying everything you do. And every customer interaction is actually logged in. So again, we are not a services company like an airline or a hotel, but we try and veer towards that definition of customer service because they have probably perfected this way better than B2B companies like us who reach out to customers. So we obviously log into Salesforce, everything that happens, but we also use Yesware. Yesware is where we log every interaction you did, be it on email. Did the email open? Did the attachment open? What was the qualification of that contact? And now we started to even qualify messages on messenger groups and WhatsApps, which clients and our teams are doing, so that we are logging every interaction. And once we do that, then we tag it to the business outcomes. Are those interactions moving the business forward? Are we creating pipelines and opportunities? And are the win-loss ratios of those opportunities improving? So I think that was a reality check. So what did that force us to do? That forced us to create a playbook. So once we heard our employees, we made sure they were all right. We created those allowances. Then we redefined interactions. And then we created a playbook, which we published to the rest of the world at Twitter. We said, okay, you know what? Those old OKRs we used to track on customer experiences, some of them are hogwash. Just remove them. And I personally don't believe in corporate speak. So I speak a very plain English. Maybe my English is not as good as yours, but I bring it down to a level that we can execute on and not look good on a deck. And I think that's one of the errors that I've seen a lot of executives do, because we focus on optimizing the deck and not optimizing a customer experience. And so we logged those interactions. We removed vanity OKRs, and we only logged interactions and customer experiences that are moving the business forward. Once we did that, we said, okay, now what's the next step? You're logging in the right OKRs. We've redefined customer experiences. We said, but what are you doing when you're interacting with them? So the first thing I told my team, lead with empathy. In the middle of a pandemic, if your teams are going aggressive with your customers, you will lose trust. And it takes, as you know, it takes years to build trust, and it takes seconds to create the deficit. I said, build trust and build empathy with these customers. So there are three flavors or slices to this. One is external. How do you show your empathy to your client partners? External. One is internal. How do you create a cross-functional empathy that, my client is in such a situation. Can you rally around and support me to make sure that they are coming out of this better? And can your products change? Whatever your product is. At Twitter, our product is our app. So what we did was we have, there are parts of Twitter where we show ads and we monetize those parts. We took one part out and we said, you know what, we will no longer monetize this part. We will in fact show the real-time information around COVID to the rest of the world. So if you log into Twitter in India or in Thailand or in Malaysia or in Philippines or Indonesia, that part which used to be monetized with our clients and partners, we actually removed it and we said we're not monetizing it. And we put real-time information from WHO and all authorized, verified sources of information. Because one thing that was happening was a lot of information that was not true, that was being spread by individuals and governments for whatever reasons that may be for them. And so we created an authentic source of information for people to come during the middle of a pandemic to go and get it at Twitter. So we changed our external facing perceptions, we changed our internal comms, and we changed our product to make sure that we are leading with empathy. And I'll exemplify the external part. There's someone in my team, and she looks after travel accounts in Southeast Asia. And she said, Arvi, what am I going to do? All my accounts are basically dead in the water. And she has only travel accounts, like Airbnb, Hiltons of the world, Singapore Airlines. She's like, how can I go and ask them for budgets when they have an existential crisis? She's Korean. I said, hey, Juan, the thing you need to focus on is they will come out on the right side of this eventually. But this is not the time to say, I'm not going to service them, I'm going to move to another vertical. This is the time to double down, lead with empathy, and come to them and say, and instead of saying, how can I help? Go prescriptive. This is what Twitter can do for you right now. Because we are what I call the conversation layer of the internet. People are talking about COVID, pandemic, solutions, all of that is happening. People are canceling their reservation, flights, hotels, etc. Those conversations are live on my platform. I said, take that and give it to them. Don't go and ask for money and budgets and what we do from marketing perspective. Show them you're leading with heart, give it to them. Once they come out on the right side of this, and they will come out on the right side of these, they will remember what you did. And this reminds me of a quote from Maya Angelou, who's an American poet. And she said, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now that quote is what holds true to me and to the team at Twitter. Because what you did and how you react in the middle of a pandemic to your clients and partners with who you had a very good relationship, but the minute those KPIs were not being met by the client, if you are backing away and if you're forcing down a paper deal and a contract to them and not looking at the spirit of the contract, but rather than the written law of the contract, I think you will create that trust deficit. And that's one thing I made sure that we are leading with that empathy. But then I said, okay, beyond empathy, what is the message that we want to take to our clients? I said, if you're going to meet your clients from a customer experience perspective, no matter who you're talking to in the organization, you could be talking to a manager, a junior manager, a director, an assistant VP, a VP, a CXO, or the chairman of the company. Assume you're talking to the CFO of the company. Every conversation has to be, no matter who's in front of you on the virtual call, you should assume that the CFO of the company is who's sitting next to you. Because if your narrative is about how you can improve ROI, you will get a better foot forward. But if you're still stuck to the old metrics and the old vanity metrics that we were talking in 2019, that jargon has to change. The selling point has to change. The partnerships framework has to change. You have to show how you can add value to their business. People are in the middle of an existential crisis, job crisis. Some of them might not even know if they have a job tomorrow. And if you're going to ask them for a marketing budget, you will not make many friends in this industry today. So I think that's one of the things. We pivoted our narrative completely to an ROI focused, saying, assume the person in front of you is a CFO, and now you make that conversation happen. Right? That was what you said. I said, what is beyond that? So when we spoke to a lot of customers, and I met a lot of CXOs in Southeast Asia, obviously, depending on which vertical industry that you are in, your ability of transforming your business, adopting technology, and going digital varies, right? Obviously, companies like us who are born on the internet at one scale of adoption of various technologies. But somebody in a manufacturing company and a legacy manufacturing company may in a different set of adoption of technologies, right? So I'm like, what role can Twitter play? And let's not go with these industry jargon of digital transformation. I say, if I see that word in anybody's deck, that deck will be deleted in front of me. And I'm very direct with my team. And we went there. And I'll give you simple examples. So obviously, a lot of our revenue and our clients are in the marketing realm where we make digital advertising, right? So we went to our clients and we asked them, I said, why are you still putting your ads on billboards in Bangkok? I said, no one's walking the streets. There's a lockdown in effect. And I said, how can I take that message that you're putting on billboards and put it on Twitter and reach the same effective audience? Because what happened during the pandemic was we saw 34% increase globally of our audiences coming on Twitter. And that has the highest increase ever of audiences Twitter globally. In markets like India and Southeast Asia, 34% was the global average. We were way ahead of that, 2 or 3x that number in most SEA and India markets. So I said, if we have so much audience coming to our platform for various reasons, people who are curious about COVID, people who are bored, they're sitting at home on the internet, they're using all various apps, including Twitter, and they want to connect to their stars, their celebrities, they're talking about e-gaming, e-sports, K-pop. These conversations were massive on Twitter. They were even talking about old TV shows because no new TV shows were being launched. So people were coming to get entertained and to connect to a community around common interests. And then we said, why don't you come on to the digital platform on Twitter and talk to that community, which we were trying to do with a one-to-many on a billboard. And we saw people transforming their marketing plans in the middle of a pandemic, moving from outdoor billboards to digital Twitter, and obviously other platforms as well. I'll give you another example. We have worked with so many governments and not-for-profit, as I said, and that's the part of my job that I find the most fulfilling. Because Twitter being used to give voice to the marginalized, but also to do a large-scale social positive impact. So a net positive to the community is where I feel my job gets validated to me. And I worked with the Indonesian government. The Indonesian government, if you remember when the COVID was at its peak, not that it's gone, but we had Eid happening. And Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world with close to 300 million Muslims in that country. And the government was petrified that people will move because people move during Eid, they go home. And Jakarta was the epicenter of the epidemic and still is the epicenter of the epidemic. So we worked with the Indonesian government to make sure their message about please don't go anywhere in the middle of a pandemic, stay home. So stay at home campaigns we ran at scale in Indonesia on Twitter to make that message because traditional methods of communication was not being fulfilled by the government. And the government had to figure out very quickly how to move to these digital native kind of forms of communication. And we did that at scale. And that was very fulfilling for me. And lastly, coming to what we are doing today. Today we are sitting on a webinar where I'm talking to you from Singapore, and I have no idea who is on the other side of the screen and which cities you're logging in from. And that's the last point. Yeah, I'll finish quickly. But we are reimagining marketing. So we have done so many webinars, and I'm sure you have been bored to death on marketing webinars and various webinars on various topics that you've attended. But what we did was, and the thing we changed, because we are Twitter and we want to be cool, we got VITs, we got celebrities. I had music concerts on Twitter, on a webinar when my CMOs were there. I had RJs come in and talk about the industry. So just bringing the flavor of some of the live element that you can get on an in-person, but making sure you're tagging it to feedback. So what you don't do well in an offline marketing is people come and go and you don't get real feedback. In a virtual, all of us can now give feedback to Economic Times on what we felt was right or wrong, or Arvi's speech was utter bullcrap, and I think we should get a better keynote speaker next time. And that feedback will help them iterate and improve, and you can keep getting better as you go on, which was slightly difficult and more vague in an offline event. That's the last point that I'd like to make. I hope I made some sense. I rambled fast because we had 15 minutes and I know you have a long day ahead of you. So appreciate that. And the stage is back to Ivan.
Thank you, Arvinder. I think that was a fantastic opening keynote. I like the way, if I may use the word, dumbed it down, no jargon, no digital transformation. And I think that's what's required. Also the focus on employees who then will be empowered to deliver a better customer experience. I think that's great. You've covered, I have one question for you. You covered quite a few points in your opening keynote, but I'll still send out this question to you. How has COVID-19 transformed Twitter and the workplace?
So the first thing that's happened is I haven't seen my office for 6 months now, right? And I'm not sure I'm going to see it anytime this year. So the concept of going to office has changed for me permanently. And not just for me, for every employee at Twitter. So we've done, so when I said we started by doing a pulse survey of our teams globally. That was not the only time. We did that 30 days after the pandemic struck, which is end of March. We've done 2 more since then. One was a mid-pandemic check on where are we at? Do we need to revise our policies? And we did one very recently again. And the thing that is coming across consistently on how a workplace is going to change is that when I looked at the numbers that I got from my team in Southeast Asia, everybody has come back. Remember, this is Singapore and Southeast Asia where people would, like India, if you're not seen in office, people assume you're not really working, right? And you're sitting at home and slacking. But now, massive change. Everybody has said, even if tomorrow there's the pandemic is over and we have the vaccine and we're good to go and offices are open, people will still work from home between 2 to 3 days a week. So I think that flexibility of being at home and the convenience of working while getting the job done. The one thing I did not mention is we log every customer interaction that we do. So we knew pre-pandemic how many meetings we do with our customers globally every week. So we have a number. When the pandemic struck, that immediately dipped for a bit. But a quarter later, we are actually exceeding the number of meetings we're doing with our customers globally than we were doing pre-COVID. Right? So which means the seasonality of meetings as the year goes on, obviously you're getting more active and more business, because that's how our seasonality curve, which means you're back to 2019 levels of activity with our interactions with customers, right? Now, obviously that there was a dip in the interim, but it's amazing to see how muscle memory is now being created from an organization perspective, that tomorrow in 2021, 2022, I think a lot of us will retain some of these muscles.
Great. Thank you once again, Arvinder. Thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule and sharing your insights with us. It sets a wonderful backdrop for this summit. We wish you and Twitter Southeast Asia the very best going forward.
Thanks a lot, and hope to see some of you maybe in an airport or maybe on a virtual call.
Sure.
Thank you.